Welcome to another episode of the Apex Perspective podcast. Today I have with me Saurabh Gupta, who is currently the co-founder at IGNYTE AI. Now, Saurabh started off as a systems analyst earlier in his career, and then he transitioned to basically getting into more business-oriented roles, and of course, getting into becoming the founder or the co-founder of IGNYTE AI. But Saurabh, can you tell me more about your background from your perspective and how it led you to IGNYTE AI?
Sure. Thanks for having me here, Aryan. I'm really glad you reached out. So, see, I've been a technologist for over 20 plus years, and my connection with tech goes way past. When I started learning to code when I was 8 years old,
Wow.
back in the days, and thanks to my dad to put me on that track. And then since then, I have always been very fascinated by new technology. When I started my early career, as always, we didn't know which direction to go. And as you rightly noticed, when I got into a systems analyst role, I actually started to work with more practitioners and a lot of people on the ground, functional folks who really understand how the businesses work, and which actually gave me an interesting perspective of how some of these day-to-day problems can be solved through technology. And there were a lot of problems they run into on a daily basis no one is even trying to solve for, and that kept me hooked on to all the work we have done so far, and also my growth journey from being part of a bigger firm to finally ended up finding a company which was a initially very small shop. uh,
Mm-hmm.
Back in the days, I have actually worked on all sides of I would say the value chain, because I'm a
Sure.
technologist right now, but I have been on the side where I was selling software. I've been
Yes.
on the side of buying software, so
Yep.
that connection has worked really well for me. And then
Mm-hmm.
also being working in some pieces of customer support, which gave
Excellent.
me a perspective
A
of
different perspective.
exactly that no software sells without awesome service, right?
Yes.
That's what makes you remember software. And that's how we are here, and we have been just
Absolutely.
trying to solve one problem after another.
And what's really interesting is a lot of the individuals who are technical who get into product development, I've actually had the experience. Some of them get customers, go into the customer service side so they can truly understand the problems that need to be solved for the customer at hand. And therefore that input can be leveraged for, of course, adding new products to the market. It could be used for refining products. But from your perspective, you've been involved in a large part of the value chain, like you said, the sales side, acquisition side, and also the customer service side. So tell me more about how you identified the gap for Ignite and what was that gap? What were those problems that are not being solved, and what compelled you to start Ignite in the first place due to that experience?
Yeah. So essentially, what happened is back in the days. I mean, I have worked with some big names like Oracle, and that was the time I thought maybe it's time to change my career trajectory. So uh, there was a small search firm here in Boston, and the CEO and I became really good friends, and we would just chat about stuff. And and he and I would speak, and I would tell him like these things we can solve with software. Good software can solve it. And
Mm-hmm.
those conversations, this is almost 10 years ago, and those casual conversations ended up us finding a new platform called Talent Boost. Um, so you don't see that name on LinkedIn anymore because Talent Boost became Ignite. And
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you the story how it happened.
Was it a
So
pivot?
it was an acquisition by Kingsley Gate,
Okay. Oh,
and we
okay.
renamed, rebranded to Ignite. And the platform is very different from what we found it, but in a good way, because
Mm-hmm.
one of the things we were trying to solve at Talent Boost was see, this was all about recruiting, right? How do you help organizations find the right talent, right? And you would know, I mean, if you look at the industry, a lot of private equity money is going into recruiting platforms.
Right.
But interestingly, what I've seen is all these platforms are built by technologists. They miss the recruiter's perspective, and
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes, most of the platforms leave the most important piece out of the picture, which is the candidate.
Mm-hmm.
And in the recruiting business, you would see candidates become clients, clients become candidates.
Yeah.
Right? It's kind of a self-feeding cycle. And what
Yep.
happens is that for some of the roles which are not senior enough, uh, recruiters get so much volume that they end up, not because they want to, uh, they don't have enough hours in the day to support the care they want to
The proper
provide.
process.
Exactly. So the problems, like you see, ghosting happens, shadow jobs, right? So people say, I never heard back from the firm. I applied to 50 jobs, no one ever came back.
And that can miss an excellent candidate.
Yeah, exactly. And that has a profound impact on employer branding, because some of the firms, they are always, everyone worries about the marketing side of the brand.
Right.
Employer branding is something very few people worry about. So one key thing we did with Talent Boost back in the day, my co-founder and I, uh, that our job is to build a platform which would be supported by, that was not the time with generative AI. So we were all robotic process automation, a lot of
Wow.
that workflow driven stuff. So we said, no matter who applies, everyone gets to tell their story.
Mm-hmm.
So we came up with a concept called compensatory assessment, which is, you don't reject a candidate by looking at the resume.
Mm-hmm.
Every candidate gets to tell the story through a one-way recorded video interview.
Mm-hmm.
And you would not believe, we saw so much success out of, for some of the clients, we had 60, 70,000 applicants, and we would help them hire 3,000 people in 30, 40 days.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the scale we were trying to drive for.
Well, Saurabh, what a very important concept here is really understanding the recruiter's perspective and what they actually look for. Now, like you said before, and I've had a recruiter on the podcast before who's launched a couple companies on this concept. It's about finding the true productivity and the true capability of the individual or the candidate. And sometimes that's not outlined in the resume specifically. So before you did these, before you were doing these interviews, you kind of had to understand what do recruiters look for and what is the best way to measure talent. What was that in your mind, and how did you capture that through this specific company?
So what we found was, the end of it, if you look at the firms and recruiters, after a while, everyone becomes a creature of habit, right? Because if you are, let's say, as simple as writing a job description, okay? So everyone's habit is, let me find out the last one I wrote, and then I'll gussy it up for the new one, right? So it's a very simple concept. You look into your folder, do a save as on Word, and create new ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
A simple interaction as that, AI can do it very effectively for you. So what we did was, AI is automatically looking at your bank of all the work you have done in 10 years and
Mm-hmm.
automatically write a bespoke job description for you. It's a very small use case. If you think about it, everyone would say ChatGPT can do it. But
Mm-hmm.
that has such a profound impact that when an hiring manager says, hey, can you help me hire XYZ? Within 5 minutes, you have something to talk about, right? So that
Yes.
has such a profound impact in the productivity. Instead of, okay, let's regroup, and then after 30 minutes, you do your work, and then it takes a week to schedule another meeting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. So this company was acquired and then it was rebranded to Ignite AI. Tell me more about that transition and what really changed structurally.
So essentially, structurally, not much has changed, because at that time, what happened is, there was no generative AI. So if you
Right.
ask me, if I had generative AI 10 years ago, I would have built the platform differently,
Of course.
right? And there was a lot of human interaction, because our goal always has been, how do you use technology to make the process more human? And
Mm-hmm.
and by that I mean is, let the system take care of the process so that you can invest more time in those meaningful client and candidate interaction. So that's the piece that has not changed. We still believe it in and believe in it, and that's something we continue to iterate on with Ignite AI. And Kingsley Gate, Kingsley Gate is a search firm. We are almost 250, 300 folks globally, and we use our own platform. And we see so much value in it that we feel there are a lot of clients out there who can benefit from it.
Excellent. So tell me more about the platform itself. How does it work, like in terms of process wise?
So end to end, it's a very workflow driven. Our goal is to build and was to build a platform that was built for recruiters by recruiters, right? I mean, not that you don't need technologists like me in the mix, but having that experience with HR tech, working with big enterprise solutions, we wanted to build an end-to-end solution that can cater to the whole recruiting lifecycle. So the way it works is, let's say you come to me and say, "Hey, Saurabh, I want to hire someone for my organization." What we can do is we can simply quickly open a job, enter 5 things in it, very simply. What role you are looking for, where would you like to hire, basic stuff. And then the AI takes over and writes a bespoke job description for you. And we can do that. But again, what happens is AI wrote it. We still want humans to look at it. Right. And then one thing that is missing always is the voice of the hiring manager. Because if you said, "I want to fill a role," but there are things in your head, we need to pour it out. Right. So what we do is we enable interactions like you can speak to the system, given your feedback. I can record a transcription, an audio file, upload it in the system, and it can incorporate that voice into all the specification. Exactly. So those are the things we have enabled.
Okay. And then how does the process go in terms of matching with the natural candidate and qualifying candidates with this process?
Yep. So what I just said was just the beginning of the piece of the puzzle, right? Because job description is just one thing. But there are more things you need to identify. Like, where would you find your best candidate? Second is, once you find them, what would you even ask them? What are the things that you would look for that role, right? Hard skills, soft skills, everything. So again, AI helps pre-bake a lot of it, because recruiting is not a linear process, it's iterative. So you can go through it, and the system again pre-bakes a list of things that you can look into. We call it a roadmap. And then human in the loop, you can still revise it and say, "This doesn't make sense," and you forgot about something. So it does that, and that criteria becomes the input for us to find candidates.
Okay.
And candidates can come in multiple ways. They can apply to a job, but for some of the more senior roles, we go after passive sourcing. So we have a search machine learning based search algorithm built into the system, so it can look at, analyze the profile, and find out how far the candidate is from the specification.
Right. Is it also able to detect culture fit as well? Because at large scale companies, when they hire globally as well, there's a degree of culture that is required. Are the algorithms capable of detecting if this kind of individual could be capable of integrating with the culture at the company?
So culture fit. See, culture means many things to an organization. Every organization defines it differently. And there are many frameworks available in the market, right? So what we have done is, with the help of some industrial psychologists and PhDs, we built a framework which essentially helps us identify the decision-making environment and the decision-making styles for a candidate. So what we say is, if the organization is in a growth mode and it's a very open organization, so someone who doesn't like collaboration might struggle working there. So it's not that they are a bad fit. It's mainly educating the hiring manager that, hey, be prepared for this transition, right? You have to have a cognitive shift around this. So again, it's not a round peg, round hole. Guy is very good. Just be prepared for something. And that's a meaningful conversation to have, and using decision as a proxy for culture.
Right. It's also a meaningful insight because if your company's in the growth stage and there's a requirement of collaboration or there's a requirement of other kind of qualities and there is none, then the issue is if you're talking to a candidate without qualifying for those qualities, then you're unfortunately not making the best use of time. So a question for you is, when it comes to matching with candidates, is there a specific list of criteria these candidates have to meet in order to be even qualified for interviews or for even consideration, or how does that process look like?
So there are some things that we look for out right off the bat, and what we focus on the most is, see, definitely the system filters. We don't want to have you all the noise. We have a huge data lake of millions of records in it. So, but how do we present the top 50 or top 100, right? So there are a number of things we look at. Simple things like, have you done this kind of a role in the past? What size of company are you coming from? Do you even have, like, if it's a Fortune 500 company, do you have experience in working with big companies, right? So there are certain indicators we can use. And then there are things that recruiters think about, but they usually don't document. Like simplest of it is, someone jumps a job every 9 months. That might be a red signal, right?
Yes.
But those are signals, and again, goes back to platform built for recruiters by recruiters. So we have infused some of it through our AI so that the AI is surfacing it even without the recruiter thinking about it.
And the idea is that you're building a platform that allows a recruiter to qualify candidates at scale specifically. Because as you said, the biggest problem is that there's a limited amount of hours in a day for a single individual or potentially organization to qualify candidates. But if you can put certain inputs into a platform like this, I can categorize and explain certain parts of the process to the organization about these candidates. I think this is something that can be done definitely at scale. So what are are there any specific limitations to how much, or how does that process work?
So from the platform, see, you can use it for all kinds of recruiting. One thing we definitely say is, if you are just trying to add people, and because most organizations, when they work with staffing firms, it's a revolving door. And a lot of times organizations don't care, right? People come in, people go. So we might not be the right place to look at, because we are trying to help you find your next best hire that is there to stay.
Right.
So if you're looking for a revolving door, then maybe a staffing firm is a better option for you, rather than investing time in understanding decision styles and all of it. So that's where we advise our clients, like, what's the best thing for them.
Love it. Yes. So what I would like to do now is go ahead and shift this conversation to more about you, Saurabh. And the first question I have for you is, what is something about you or about your life that you wish more people were aware of or knew about?
So for me, I would say I'm a technologist and a geek. I love being hands-on. And a couple years ago, I'm very aware of my blind spots, I would say that. And then one thing I have learned so far is, the best thing you can do ever is just listen. Because if you can listen, and even with my experiences with being a consultant, I've realized if you listen closely, you can unpack a lot of problems just by asking the right questions. And that's something I feel I have invested a lot of time in being and inculcating that active listening in my life. And on the flip side, it definitely helps, and it's humbling that when I see my son is 9 years old now. Even with my son, just seeing him, it gives me a perspective of understanding, like, what's going on in his universe, and how do I handle it different. It's not very different problem to solve, but you can relate to it.
Absolutely. And I haven't asked this question to any guest before, but I am curious. Has there been a situation that you thought was a negative situation at the time, but later on in your life realized that was actually a good and positive situation that occurred for you? Maybe an opportunity for growth.
I think top of mind, I must say this would be around, I would say about 12 years ago. It
Okay.
wasn't really a negative, but I was on to the sales side of things. And as you know, sales guys have a lot of pressure, right? There is always a pressure of meeting the targets, which, having worked on the back end of the software, is usually not a thing. But
Hmm.
later on, it did give me an appreciation on um, how to negotiate deals, right? Because that is something I learned. And also across the table, how to talk to the clients. What are the clients expecting? Because when
Hmm.
clients were expecting something out of me, now I can see I can expect and rotate that view when I'm working with my partners.
Right. Right. So it's a different kind of insight you've gained through that experience. Although potentially at the time it was different from what you've done before, there's more pressure. There were certain insights you gained that probably definitely helped you with Ignite and
Exactly.
probably be able to get the proper insights there. So what I'll do now is go ahead and share a quick perspective regarding fitness and health, and we'll go ahead and conclude the podcast with Saurabh's plan for this year, whether that's professionally or personally. So the perspective I want to share today, there's really one main one. It's about really challenging the requirements of making a physical transformation. Now, a lot of my viewers, as you know, Saurabh, are essentially executives and entrepreneurs. So how can I make this advice and as time efficient as possible, could I say? So the reason I say challenge the requirements or the perceived requirements is because if you think about making a physical transformation, a lot of 4 or 5 times a week, you have to go to the studio a couple times a week. And the issue with this is that you have to commute there, you have to commute back, you have to the accessibility to make this kind of transformation, it feels like it's not as strong, the accessibility part. So what you have to do is challenge what actually moves the needle or is able to allow you to lose weight or build muscle. If you look at losing weight specifically, there's really one main requirement. It's a negative energy balance. You have to have the right amount of movement and you have to have the right amount of calories. Out of these two, what takes our time is primarily the movement. So the idea is, can you make your approach more location independent as opposed to location dependent? Meaning something you don't have to do in one fixed location. What I recommend for the losing weight part is leveraging something like step count, because you can do that while you're listening to this podcast. You can do this while you're traveling. As long as there's a ground underneath you, you can essentially do it. So what we've
Hmm.
done is we identify the requirements. We identify a different way to get there. Now, I've gotten input that people want me to give advice on building muscle. It's the same concept. You don't have to adhere to a traditional perspective. You identify what moves the needle and then basically create a pathway to get there as efficient as possible. So the idea is, can you, the main requirement here is, can you get stronger on a week-to-week basis? If you spend 20 minutes going to a gym and you got stronger in those 20 minutes, you've done a lot more, you've done a lot more progress than going to the gym 4 times a week and not getting stronger. So you have to understand what drives actual the progress you want and identify how can you be efficient there. So there are traditional ways to do things. There's regimented ways to do things. There's also efficient ways to do things. And I'd focus on understanding the requirements first, then building the pathway to get there. And step count is actually what I even use to lose over 70 pounds and actually keep it off. But the idea is, can you make sure you understand the requirements and build build efficient pathways to get there is the idea. So that was the perspective I want to share today, and hopefully it made sense and was viable. What I'll do now is go ahead and shift this conversation to Saurabh's plan for this year, whether that's professionally or personally.
Sure. Um, Thanks, Aaron. Yeah, I mean, I must say what you say is really good. I think it's the small habit that gives you big impact, and
Mhm.
it's that I absolutely agree. The little things definitely help. And for us right now, where we are, and again, if I go back, think about our journey, right? Um, if I think back 10 years ago, or now it's what, 8 years ago when COVID happened, right?
Yeah.
So we started with Talent Boost as just a POC and helped so many counties, universities with their COVID response teams, right? So that's what we did. Where we are in our journey is that we are at an inflection point where we have rotated the platform so that we can also help bigger organizations into their journeys. So for this year, our goal is Kingsley Gate definitely uses the platform, and the global team uses it. our goal is how can we make this accessible to our clients and others who might benefit with the type of hiring and the concept we are trying to instill. Because again, everyone wants to compete with the big boys, but is there something that is more palatable? And going back to what actually a recruiter needs, how can we fit hand in glove with them? And that's what we are shooting for with some of these bigger organizations as well.
And I'll say something about that. I think I actually had a couple of VCs on this podcast before. The idea of needing to compete with other companies is not as efficient as trying to produce a unique value for your target audience or for your target recruiters
Exactly.
in this perspective. So I really like that perspective. So where can people learn more about you, Saurabh, and more about Ignite AI?
So the best place is definitely LinkedIn and the Ignite AI website. There's a lot of work as well going on onto there, and there is a series of AI and recruiting articles coming out. So you would see me posting some of those more from my day-to-day perspectives and how we are using Gen AI tools for even operational metrics, BI, analytics, all of that.
Excellent. Well, thank you for coming on the podcast. This was Aryan Mohindra and Saurabh Gupta.